50-year journey come full circle. Written by Matthew A. Johnson, I'm Willi Rose, and this is Chapter 10, called Persistence. It was now the summer of 2006, and I found myself to be totally rejuvenated, excited, and motivated to jump back into the Bigfoot research field. Although I truly missed my mentor and good friend and father figure, Dr. Bill York, I knew that he would want me to continue with our work. Matter of fact, I felt a nudge coming from him every now and then. I was constantly reminded of his words regarding persistence that he had talked with me about on several occasions. He also wrote about the necessity of persistence as a Bigfoot researcher prior to his death on November 12, 2003. And here it is. Persistence is the most important attribute to a Bigfoot researcher by William York, Doctor of Science in Wildlife Biology. Those who search for Bigfoot are certain to experience much disappointment and frustration. Starting with high excitement and enthusiasm, most casual searchers soon become frustrated by the lack of actual sight or sound of the creatures. Despite perhaps an abundance of evidence, a failure to have more tangible contact causes a reduction in enthusiasm, and many people give up after only a few trips into Bigfoot country. I have just returned from a weekend trip, September 9th and 10th, with Dr. Matthew Johnson, psychologist who actually saw a Bigfoot while hiking with his family on July 1st, 2000. Several of Dr. Johnson's friends were also of the party. We discovered a good deal of evidence indicative of the most recent presence of Bigfoot in the area of search, i.e. snap trees, bedding area, large foot impressions, etc. We even had a nocturnal visitation by a very large animal on Saturday evening, but no actual confirmed sighting of Bigfoot. Although very sporting in their comments, I did note disappointment and believe that some of the party did not continue to search for Bigfoot in the future. Being a neophyte in the Bigfoot field, I held low expectations. Matter of fact, I began our research expedition as a skeptic and stated as such at the end of our time together. I was, however, thrilled by the indisputable evidence we gathered over the weekend. The lack of tangible evidence, i.e. not being able to see Bigfoot, reminded me of my early years as a professional hunter in Africa. There is a very large, up to 850-pound antelope inhabiting the mountain forests of Kenya called bongo. Bucerus ucerus. It's very secretive and shy and rarely seen. Being a very prized trophy, it was in past years hunted by sportsmen guided by professionals on many scores of safaris. There are professionals who have conducted a dozen hunts for bongo and never even seen one. My experience could have been the same. I conducted 6 safaris, each about 14 days long, without seeing a single bongo. It was deeply frustrating, not to say humiliating, to hunt a known animal, finding abundant sign of its presence, and yet not catching a sight of it. I almost gave up hunting bongo. On my 7th hunt, however, things changed. Probably because of the past failures, I had acquired a good deal of knowledge and understanding of bongo, much of it, no doubt, unconsciously. On this 7th hunt, we were successful in obtaining a fine trophy. Subsequent hunts were equally successful, showing that, in fact, bongo were quite numerous, showing that earlier failure was due to the lack of knowledge of bongo. From similar experiences with other rare animals, I have concluded that persistence is the most important attribute to a Bigfoot researcher. I fully intend to be persistent in the complete confidence that I shall eventually have repeated encounters with this elusive and very real creature. And that's the end of the writing by Dr. William York. How could I not jump back into the Bigfoot research field? How could I not remain committed and persistent in my pursuit of the truth? My friend Jason had just handed me a major gift on a silver platter. The two 22-inch tracks along the side of the pond halfway up the mountainside from his home. Those tracks led me up to the top of a mountain with a logging road on the ridgeline and to a brand new base camp. Not only was there track evidence that led me there, as I started to explore the surrounding area, I also found several tree structures. For the newbies, tree structures are obvious manipulated trees and branches placed in certain positions that could not occur via natural circumstances, such as windstorms, snow snaps, or age and gravity. Instead, these trees have been picked up, moved, placed, and woven with other trees and branches that demonstrate intelligence and design, not a natural occurrence. I named this new location the Southern Oregon Research Area, or SORA, so it would be easier to refer to it when I would generate any reports online. While living in Grants Pass, I spent a lot of time up there in SORA, and I never went alone. I always brought one or more people with me because I wanted witnesses to verify what I was observing or experiencing. If all I ever did was go alone and report on what I was seeing and experiencing, it would be easy for people to blow me off as a liar or hoaxer. However, if I brought along other people who were also seeing, hearing, and experiencing what I was, then it would be a lot harder for the skeptics to dismiss what I was reporting. I now preferred to have these people come from long distances because I had learned that most local guests from Southern Oregon couldn't be trusted. In the past, my come one, come all policy turned out to be altruistic and naive. I believed that my intentions were good and that I meant well. I truly wanted people to come along, experience, and learn more about the Bigfoot phenomena. I've always been passionate about education, and I wanted people to have the opportunity to get out and experience something that they would never do on their own. Previously, everyone who came along with Dr. York and me were grateful and expressed their gratitude. Everyone promised that they would never come back to the research area without us. They also agreed to never tell anyone else about the location of our research area. However, I was obviously naive because on a couple of occasions we caught people on videotape bringing up carloads of their friends to our research area. On another occasion, we caught one of our members bringing his friends up to the area for some target shooting. They didn't even realize that they were setting up targets all around our hidden video camera and came close to hitting it on a few occasions. By the way, the fact that they almost hit the video camera was the least of my worries. What astonished me was the ignorance of the shooters and the total lack of respect for the Bigfoot in the area. How in the world were we ever going to gain their trust and get them to come closer to us if we're going to turn their home into a target shooting location? It made no sense to me at all. When Dr. York and I confronted the gentlemen involved, they became defensive and offended. They thought that we were making a big deal out of nothing. They dropped out of the group, which was fine with me. The experience also taught me to be more selective about who I invited to come along with me on my Bigfoot research expeditions. With the new research area, I had the opportunity to start all over again with a new approach to screening and selecting guests. Truth be told, I also had people tag along with me because I was still scared to death to ever go alone. I had yet to achieve the courage and confidence that Dr. York displayed during our past expedition trips, When the campfire was dying at night and people were starting to climb into their tents, Dr. York would walk away from the base camp in the dark to his tent several hundred yards away from everyone else. He wanted to be alone and sleep alone at night. On one occasion, I tried to convince him to take my .44 Magnum handgun with him, but he adamantly refused to do so. I asked why, and he responded, "Matt, earlier in my life, I shot and killed way too many animals. I've carried a lot of guilt with me throughout my life as a result. I put my guns up for a reason. I have no intention of borrowing yours." I asked, "But Bill, what if you're walking to your tent tonight and a cougar or black bear decides to make you a meal?" He retorted, "How many people do you know or have you heard about in southern Oregon being killed and eaten by a cougar or black bear?" I responded, "None." He quickly stated, "Precisely. I'm perfectly safe walking the logging road at night, as well as sleeping alone at night. Besides, Bigfoot isn't going to visit anyone in this base camp full of so many people in tents. If he comes to say hello to anyone, it will be me, who's sleeping all by myself, far away from everyone." Well, Bill had a point. I wasn't going to argue with his logic. I just never had the courage to follow suit, at least not yet. In Sora, our experiences were equivalent to my two previous research areas. We experienced occasional heavy-footed bipedal steps around the perimeter of the base camp. They were very stealthy and would walk very quietly for such a large animal. Occasionally, we would hear the large snap of a stick or branch that they would step on. Oops! We would also see some occasional silhouettes, eye glow, and hear a growl or two. On one occasion, I had a couple from England contact me via the internet, and they informed me that they would be traveling through the Pacific Northwest while on a summer vacation. They asked if they could join me in Sora for 2 nights. Well, they most certainly met my screening criteria for living far away from Southern Oregon. I didn't have to worry about them coming back to Sora without me. I also trusted that they wouldn't give up the location of Sora to anyone else, so I brought them with me. Not much activity happened on the first night. We heard what we thought were some heavy-footed bipedal steps at a distance, accompanied by one wood knock. However, on this second night, we hiked up the trail to the other logging road and conducted a night sit up there. About an hour into it, we had movement around the perimeter. Then, about 100 feet down the logging road, we all heard a very deep, bass, mammal-like guttural growl that lasted for about 30 seconds. Then there was a 30-second pause. Then the growl happened a second time, another pause. Finally, the growl occurred the third time. The British couple was sitting in their chairs with their eyes wide open as saucers. They were obviously terrified. The gentleman said in a panicked voice, "That's a Bigfoot, isn't it? That's a Bigfoot. What are we going to do?" I responded, "Relax. We're going to be just fine." Then I stood up in the pitch dark of night, looked down the road in the direction that the growl was coming from, and said rather loudly, "Is that it? Is that all you got? Step up on the road so we can see you. Quit being afraid of us and hiding behind the bush." The Bigfoot responded to me by verbalizing a very big, deep sigh, turned around, and started walking back down the mountainside. The British couple was astonished by my bravery, and the lady asked, "How did you know that you weren't going to anger it and cause it to come over and kill all of us?" I replied, "I had a very good friend who taught me to let the facts rule my judgment and decisions out here in the wilderness rather than my fears. I've been out here for 6 years now, and the Bigfoot have never been aggressive towards me. Nor have they ever killed me. He was bluffing us and trying to intimidate us and to get us to leave. I simply called him on his bluff, and he just realized that I figured it out. As I said, we're going to be just fine. The next morning, the British gentleman walked over to the spot where the Bigfoot was standing behind the bush and growling at us. He found some very large human-like footprints. He also found some tracks leading down the mountainside where he walked after I had called him on his bluff. They left Sora happy campers and enjoyed their Bigfoot experience. During the following 4 years, I persistently returned to Sora 1 to 2 weekends per month. I would stay for 2 to 4 nights at a time. As previously stated, I would always have 1 or more people with me because I wanted witnesses and I was too afraid to be up there by myself. However, in my defense, I would make day trips to Sora on my own. I would always carry my .44 Magnum handgun with me for backup. When I walked around Sora in the daylight, I could sense that I was being followed and watched. My sixth sense or spidey senses developed over time. On one occasion during a day trip to Sora, I was by myself. I was walking around and looking for evidence such as tracks or new tree structures. At one point, I really had to go to the bathroom. I pulled my pants down to my ankles, grabbed a hold of a branch with one hand, and leaned back as if I were sitting on an invisible toilet. This would allow me to conduct my business without soiling the backside of my legs, socks, shoes, etc. While I was doing my thing, I felt like I was being watched from behind. I turned my head and looked over my left shoulder. Sure enough, there was a juvenile Bigfoot looking over the top of a very large fallen tree at me. He was only about 30 feet away from me. He had a dark cone-shaped head and black eyes. I said, "Hello," turned my head and continued with my business. I looked back in his direction about 10 seconds later, and he had ducked down behind the fallen tree. Just before I finished my business, I looked back at him one more time, and he was looking at me again from behind the log. Suddenly, he cocked his head to the side and gave me a puzzled look, as if to say, "That's how you guys do it?" I started laughing, cleaned up, pulled my pants back up, and walked away. That was my first introduction to Seska. I didn't realize it then, but I would literally watch him grow up and come to know him much better over the years. I persistently continued to utilize the old-school paparazzi money shot approach in Sora. I would hang up trail cams and take advantage of others who offered to bring their night vision or thermal imaging equipment. However, we ran into the same problems that we ran into in my previous research location. It appeared that the Bigfoot could see the infrared light and would avoid it at all cost. In both research locations, there was clear and consistent evidence of the Bigfoot approaching an area where a trail cam was hanging on a tree. Then we could see that they altered their course in order to avoid the trail cam. However, when the trail cam was turned off, the Bigfoot would walk right in front of the device without any worries. Also, unlike my previous research area, the Bigfoot in Sora would not take the food that I was leaving for them. Every night I would put out fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, fresh meat, bread, and candy. Every night they left my food alone. They wouldn't touch it. I'm talking for 4 straight years. For the record, nothing touched the food for 4 straight years. That includes little critters and birds, too. I was totally befuddled. In the previous research area that Dr. York and I worked on together, the Bigfoot would take the food that we left for them as long as we turned off the trail cams. If we left the trail cams on, they wouldn't touch the food either. However, if we turned off the trail cams, they would take the food. I should note that the Bigfoot not only took our food, They would peel the bananas and leave the peelings in a neat pile. They would husk the corn, eat it, then place the husk in one neat pile and the corn cobs in a different neat pile. It was amazing. Yes, the Bigfoot in Sora wouldn't touch the food at all, no matter what we tried. In the spirit of Dr. York's wisdom, I remained persistent and continued to leave them food, even though I was flushing a lot of money down the toilet every month. On one occasion, my buddy Howie Gordon joined me in Sora. I met Howie Gordon when he wrote me asking if he could join me in my research area. He had been on the Big Brother reality TV show in seasons 6 and 7. He shared with me that he had been interested in the Bigfoot phenomena since he was a young boy. What he didn't know is that I was a Big Brother fan, and a major fan of his during those 2 seasons. When Howie and I first met, we were both members of the Mutual Admiration Society, MAS, for about 24 hours. Then we calmed down and started to get to know one another better while we were up in the mountainside, engaged in Bigfoot research. As usual, Howie and I placed the food in a bait pile outside of the base camp. The next morning, as usual, all of the food was right where we left it. They didn't take any of the food at all. However, something new and different did happen. For the first time in 4 years, they finally responded to my leaving them food. Although they didn't take any food, they acknowledged my gift and left a very large branch on the ground right by the pile of food, kind of like a calling card or a thank you. Howie Gordon and I thoroughly examined the trees in the surrounding area and determined that the large branch absolutely did not fall from above. Matter of fact, the large branch that was placed by the pile of food was aged, gray, and did not come from any tree in the local area. Therefore, it was not only not fresh, it was obviously carried in from another area and placed by the pile of food. We were both excited that they finally did something to respond back to my leaving them food after 4 years of persistence. Progress was slowly but surely being made. Emphasis on slowly. Matter of fact, to be honest, after spending 4 enthusiastic, persistent years in Sora, I was starting to hit the proverbial brick wall again. However, this time, it wasn't because I was grieving the loss of my friend, Dr. Bill York. I had worked through my grief and loss issues, and that was no longer affecting me like it once did. Rather, I was hitting a 10-year proverbial brick wall regarding the fact that no matter what I did or tried to do, the Bigfoot simply weren't coming in any closer. They always kept their distance from me. My sense was that they were merely tolerating my presence in their home, but they certainly weren't interested in interacting with me. I started thinking about some of the leaders in the field that most Bigfoot researchers and armchair enthusiasts looked up to, and I began to recognize a pattern that I actually found to be very discouraging. For example, the 4 horsemen of Bigfootdom, although respected by all researchers and armchair enthusiasts in the field, did not fan the flames of enthusiasm for me because of their own lack of success. What do I mean by making such a blasphemous statement? Well, first things first. I absolutely intend no disrespect at all. Truly. Rather, I'm simply stating the facts and pointing out the truth. Although John Green, a Canadian journalist, did a wonderful job of collecting a plethora of stories over several decades, he never saw or interacted with a Bigfoot. Although Grover Krantz, a professor of anthropology at Washington State University, helped to bring the subject of Bigfoot into academia, he never saw or interacted with a Bigfoot. Peter Byrne, an acclaimed monster hunter, spent almost 50 years of his life looking for Bigfoot, but never saw one. Finally, Renee Dahinden, a famous Bigfoot researcher, also never laid eyes on a Bigfoot, let alone interacted with one. Yet these are the four horsemen in Bigfootdom? These are our role models for Bigfoot research? What's my point? Well, my point is a simple one. In 2010, I came to the realization that I had just spent 10 years of my life engaged in Bigfoot research, yet I was not doing much better than the leaders I had just mentioned. What did I have to show for after 10 years of Bigfoot research? Several footcasts, a couple of visuals, some growls, screams, and a few tree knocks. So what? I felt like I was about to spend the next 10, 20, 30, or 40 years of my life doing the same thing and not getting any further than the four horsemen of Bigfootdom. The only thing that was separating me from them was that I actually had some sightings. Was this it? Was this all I could expect from my efforts? Is this all anyone could expect from their efforts? No, I wanted more than this. I wanted to be able to interact with them on a consistent basis. I wanted to experience Dr. York's bongo moment that he wrote about after his 7th hunt. Ultimately, I wanted to be able to show up to my research area, sit down with the Bigfoot, share some food with him, and hold one of the toddlers on my lap. Footcasts, growls, screams, and tree knocks were no longer working for me. I wanted more, much more, but how was I going to get there? Well, first, I had to come to the realization and understanding that replicating the approach of the four horsemen was not the way to do it. I'm a psychologist and a problem solver. I helped other people solve their problems, and I knew if I thought this one through, I could come up with a new and more productive game plan. I thought about it, and my problem-solving skills led me to the doorstep of the fringe Bigfoot researchers, the crazy kooks, the woo-woo gang. However, there was just one tiny itty-bitty problem. These were the people that I had been treating like crap online for the past 10 years. Before the advent of Facebook, I participated in Bigfoot email listservs, like most all other Bigfoot researchers. Whenever the crazy kooks would raise their silly heads, speak up, and talk about interacting with Bigfoot on a regular basis, I would slice them and dice them. Like many other Bigfoot researchers, I would tell them to go crawl back into the hole that they came from and stop discrediting us serious researchers. Now I found myself seriously considering changing things up and trying their approach to Bigfoot research. Well, why not? My persistence in utilizing the old-school paparazzi money shot approach wasn't paying very many dividends. I just gave the approach 10 years of my life. Why not give a different approach a try for the next 10 years? So I threw in the towel and joined the other side. I left my high-tech equipment at home and adopted the Dr. Jane Goodall approach. I adopted and adapted some of her habituation research methods and started implementing them with the Bigfoot in Sora. As a result, Sora ended up being renamed to the Southern Oregon Habituation Area, or SOHA, SOHA. The only problem was that I was completely clueless about the rabbit hole that I was about to fall into. Alice in Wonderland ain't got nothing on me. And that's the end of chapter 10. All right, chapter 11, joining the light side of the forest. This should be fun. Don't forget, this is Bigfoot, a 50-year journey come full circle by Dr. Matthew A. Johnson. By the way, you can find his books on Amazon, but be sure you put the A in before the Johnson. I'm Willi Rose. See you on chapter 11.